I hope you're all feeling caffeinated and refreshed after the break. My name is Laura McFarlane, and I'm Vice President of Strategy at SapientNitro. So in our digitally enabled and empowered world, brands are really differentiated and defined less by what the brand says and through traditional advertising, and more through how a brand behaves, the kind of functionality and the utility and the services that brands are now able to provide across multiple touch points. At SapientNitro, we believe in purpose-based strategies, and we unlock the value and the potential of our clients' brands by really uncovering the value or the purpose of those particular brands and bringing them to life through experiences that are designed to drive a deeper connection with and a more pervasive connection with our customers. So what I'd like to do today is to really explore the idea of purpose in more detail. And so I'm delighted to introduce Professor Joey Reiman, founder and CEO of BrightHouse, where he works leading Fortune 500 companies to help them uncover their purpose and create commercial success through social value. He's recognized as one of Fast Company's 100 people who will change the way the world thinks, and is the winner of over 500 creative awards in writing and advertising, including a Cannes Lion. Joey Reiman is also the author of 4 books, and his latest, The Story of Purpose, is due to be released this December. So with no more ado, please allow me to introduce Professor Joey Reiman.
I want to tell you a little story about a young African-American woman, 19 years old, an amazing and remarkable dancer, so her parents said. They ought to know. They put her through dance school, dance lessons for 17 years of her life. They weren't a wealthy couple, so they had to get a second job, each of them, to put her through her dance lessons in hopes that one day people like yourselves would see her dance. And that one day came when she received a letter from the Harlem Opera House inviting her to dance in front of thousands of people. Her parents were elated. They called their relatives. People came from all over. There were journalists. She flew up to Harlem and stood behind a curtain. And the announcer came out and said, "Ladies and gentlemen, we have the most remarkable dancer for you tonight. Please welcome her." And this young woman comes out from behind the curtain, taps on the mic, and says, "Ladies and gentlemen, Mom and Dad, I'm not going to dance tonight." And you can imagine the Harlem Opera House is stunned. And for what feels like eternity, you can't hear a pin drop. She says, "But I am going to dance." Sing, rather. And Ella Fitzgerald belts out a song that the world never, ever forgets. This is the story of purpose, about a young woman who had both intention and wanted to make a contribution. She was taught how to dance, but she really wanted to sing. She wanted to get in touch with her own ethos. All of you are Ella Fitzgeralds. Some of you have gotten in touch with your ethos, your genuine self. Some of you are living that calling versus a career or a job. But most of us are in jobs and careers too small for our spirits. The reason? We're not in touch with our purpose, with our intention, and we don't make the contribution. Intention is great, but without contribution, intention is impotent. Contributions are great, but without intention, contributions are blind. But when you have them together, you have this amazing concept called purpose, which is what I want to talk to you today about. I want to share a few stories about purpose. You know, connectology, what an amazing word. It really is all about purpose, isn't it? Because purpose has an aligning quality. It aligns our values with what we love and what we don't. It has a quality of advocacy. and connectology taken all the way to the future tells us of a world that is united around purpose. You know, this might be the second connectology conference. I know this is our third time getting together, but this theme resonated back when our country began. And since we're in political times, I thought I'd share that little story. You know, we started as 13 colonies with 13 monies, 13 leaders, 13 flags, 13 mottos, 13 mantras. 13 guys that didn't like one another and didn't like the states next to them. As a matter of fact, in one meeting, I think it was Georgia pulled out of the meeting. They left the meeting saying that Rhode Island was 222 times the size of Georgia, so why would they have any representation? And then a marketer named Ben Franklin, arguably one of the first marketing guys, runs around from state to state and basically gives this great speech, and the end line is, if we don't hang together, we'll certainly hang separately. And of course, he was talking by a noose. Well, this actually got everyone to come to Philadelphia at their own connectology conference, and they came out with a purpose, a 3-word purpose. We are the people. We are the people. 4-word purpose. Every president who harkens back to that purpose, their numbers go up. And everyone that deviates, their numbers go down. Why? Because like organizations that have corporate amnesia about their brands, we forget where we came from. I love to say the fruits are in the roots. It is our ethos where the seeds and the gems and the treasures for our futures are, whether it's personal or professional. Purpose of first, family, which is there. I call myself a familionaire, which is someone who puts wealth in their family, and a company that would help companies find and discover their purpose, their ethos, their story. Because what this all comes down to is the story that you tell, as Clay mentioned, you're going to hear it over and over again. People need stories more than they need food, and purpose is at the heart of every story. This is my story, and this is my company's story. What is your story? And what is your brand story and your company story? And how will that story mitigate the ills of the world? You know, purpose is nothing new. Aristotle had a great idea in 6 BC. He said, where our talents and the gifts of the world intersect, there lies our vocation, our voca, from the Latin calling. It's the same for brands, where your talents, where the brand's talents, where the organization's talents and unique gifts intersect with the needs of the world, and there are plenty needs in the world, there lies our purpose. Imagine what a company could do if they focused themselves outside just shareholder value to a more of a stakeholder value platform, where one expands their orbit of caring to include not just the 800 million people at the top of the pyramid spending $40 trillion a year, but over or close to 7 billion people who are underserved, underprivileged, underrated, undervalued, underwater. That's what the company has been doing for 17 years. And that's my story. Now yours. This is the story of business. This is the story we're in. Business. Business started, had a great idea. You read The Wealth of Nations, it wasn't called about the wealth of individuals. It was, the whole idea was, we're going to make a lot of money, we're going to save, not just serve society. 3 guys have a different idea. Morgan loves railroads. We've got Carnegie, loves steel, and Rockefeller, oil. And these 3 guys, basically, this polyarchy, get together and basically run our country. They're the reason we have a locomotive as a symbol of the Industrial Revolution. I'd like to reframe locomotive and add a hyphen between loco and motive. Because this is where we started, and here is where we ended up. Business took an evil turn somewhere. It roared into the South, uprooting a feudal system from its past. It burst onto the West, dictating directives that would bring down native economies and Native American people. And then it crashed into the North, and the East, creating incredible engines of wealth, but also bastions and landfills of squalor and poverty. And today, where are we? Where did the train take us? The train took us to a suddenly. Here we sit in modern times with what I would call 4 dark horses. Terror, my kids grew up with it. They watched CNN from birth. We're also terrorized by the notion of whether or not we're loved or not, and whether or not we'll have a job or not. The economies all over the world are teetering. Homo sapiens have become Homo consumens. And because of that, they believe that if they buy things, they will be happier. But it's not about buying anything. It's about buying into a story that makes you happy. It's being part of a story, part of a verse. That's what the next chapter of business is all about. How companies and brands will be part of that verse. Because whether it's a terror, whether it's economy, or whether it's a teetering, a compromised environment, we are facing the worst dark horse of all, which is a crisis in meaning. This is an amazing piece of research done by Jag Sheth, author of Firms of Endearment. Great book about endearing companies becoming enduring companies. And let me tell you why this is so amazing. This chart below, the horizontal axis, those are companies, S&P 500 companies. That's their return on investment over a 10-year period, basically 126%. Now, good to great companies, made famous by Jim Collins, very popular book along with Built to Last. They looked at companies that were on his list, and they found out something very interesting. Collins said companies should have a purpose, but he didn't say the purpose had to be authentic. Now, what's that? That's like going out on a date and like Facebooking the other person, finding out what their values are, and then, I have the same values as you. That does not last. That does not last, but this is what companies are doing. They do R&D, they find out what the consumer, segmented consumer, wants, and then they reflect that. The relationship never, ever lasts. Actually, many of the companies on that list Built to Last are no longer here, including Fannie Mae and a few others. But this number still was almost 3 times this number, just from an inauthentic purpose. But ladies and gentlemen, look at the number. When you look at firms and brands that have an authentic ethos, that means that we've reached back to the beginning sentiment of the organization. You know, Disney really did believe in magic. When you wish upon a star, it makes a difference who you are. You know, I know you all think that you're positive that when you wish upon a star, the wish doesn't come back, but you all know it does come back. You don't have to tell me. I know you know. When it's ethodically correct, when the culture is held together, like we did, I actually saw with Michael Eisner when he tried to move it apart. We saw with Steve Jobs when they removed him. When it's held together by values that are not compliant, but real values, not the values your parents teach you, like quality, integrity, humility, but like McDonald's values, ketchup in the veins, drive through it, 1 in a billion, milkshake's always half full. That's a better expression than optimism. When those values wrap that culture and inform strategy and tactics, we get unlimited revenue. Over 1,026%, that's actually an old number. And our engagement scores are close to 1,000% over companies that don't have a greater purpose. Stories that don't have a story. Go into Whole Foods. I do this all the time. I go to a bagger and I say, so what's your purpose? The bagger explains the story of Whole Foods to me, as well as John Mackey, who won CEO 3 years in a row, can explain to me. So if you don't have a story, you don't have a chance. But if you have a story, then you're going to be part of the next chapter of business. Really, our whole future of this whole world really depends on the story that you tell. Not the brand that you build, but the story that you tell. And the most amazing part, and this is where I'll end my talk, is that this is the first time in history where a story isn't just read to your children, which is, I think, the reason why stories were created in the first place, and certainly the next generation is not for us, but for our children. But it's the first time, because of social media, that these stories have no geography, have no demographics, have no psychographics, have no segmented platform. It's all about aggregation. So our stories together then create the next chapter in business. And that's where I'll end for right now. Thank you so much.